Hey everyone, and welcome to another edition of The Explainer. You know, when most of us think about the Great Lakes, we usually picture these really peaceful summer vacation spots, right? Sailing, hitting the beaches, maybe a weekend picnic. But today, we are going to look at a completely different side of these waters. We're going to look at them not as tranquil recreation destinations, but as active graveyards, ancient crime scenes, and honestly, living, breathing antagonists holding some truly terrifying, perfectly preserved secrets. Okay, let's just dive right into this, because what we're covering today is absolutely going to change how you view the middle of the North American continent forever. 6,000. Just take a second, really let that number sink in. There are roughly 6,000 documented shipwrecks resting at the bottom of the Great Lakes. To put that into perspective, that's actually more shipwrecks than the entire eastern seaboard of the United States. It's more than the English Channel. It is literally one of the most densely populated underwater graveyards on the planet. And the crazy thing is, these aren't just scattered, rotting planks of wood.
Now, here's where things get absolutely wild. It's the dramatic contrast in the water chemistry. See, if a ship sinks out in the ocean, salt water immediately starts to corrode the metal, wood-boring organisms eat the hull, and the ocean essentially just destroys the whole thing within a few decades. But the Great Lakes, they're freshwater, and those deep basins hover right near freezing year-round. It is so incredibly cold down there that the bacteria responsible for decomposition simply cannot do their work. So because of this freezing preservation, many of these ships and the things trapped inside them stay completely intact for centuries.
Let's move into Section 1, the world's largest graveyard, looking at famous wrecks and sudden disappearances.
We really have to start our descent by looking at one of the most famous modern shipwrecks and the sudden, terrifying disappearances that kind of define these waters. On November 10, 1975, the SS Edmund Fitzgerald, which was this massive 729-foot freighter, was caught in a brutal Lake Superior storm. We're talking 70-mile-per-hour winds and 35-foot waves. "We are holding our own." Those were the chilling final words spoken over the radio by her highly experienced captain, Ernest McSorley.
Right after Captain McSorley's final transmission, the unimaginable happened. The ship didn't send out a distress call. It didn't launch any lifeboats. It just vanished from the radar. Instantly. When the wreck was finally located in 530 feet of water, the sheer violence of the sinking was shocking. The bow section had actually plowed into the mud at a steep angle, burying itself all the way up to the deck. All 29 men aboard were lost. Whatever happened out there, it happened in a matter of seconds. No warning at all. Which brings us to Section 2, disasters in plain sight, tragedies at the dock and in the sky. You know, we naturally associate shipwrecks with the deep, dark, open water during these massive storms. But 844. Think about that for a second. 844 people died. And they didn't die in a massive ocean storm. They died while tied to a dock on a Saturday morning. It's really one of the most under-discussed catastrophes in American history. On July 24, 1915, the SS Eastland was boarding passengers for a fun summer picnic right on the Chicago River. Well, it was a totally top-heavy vessel, and it simply rolled completely onto its side in just 20 feet of water. 844 people, mostly working-class families, women, and children, were trapped below the decks and drowned. Let that sink in. More Americans died in broad daylight on that Chicago dock than perished in the freezing midnight open ocean on the RMS Titanic.
But hey, the lakes don't just swallow ships. Take Northwest Orient Flight 25501. In June of 1950, this commercial flight carrying 58 people hit severe thunderstorms over Lake Michigan. They made a completely routine radio call at 2,500 feet, and then they vanished. Just gone. Witnesses actually reported seeing a strange flash of light. Now, while some tiny, shattered pieces of debris were eventually found floating on the surface, the massive, intact fuselage and the engines, they have never been found. It remains the deadliest commercial aviation disaster in Great Lakes history, and it is completely unsolved.
Let's delve into Section 3, the freshwater time machine and the macabre science of the deep.
Okay, so we've seen the sheer scale of the tragedies, but now we need to descend even deeper into the chilling biological reality of the lakes. And fair warning, what this water actually does to human biology is, well, it's deeply unsettling. To understand it, we have to look at a very real scientific process called saponification. Because the deeper waters hover right around 36 to 39 degrees Fahrenheit year-round, normal decomposition just stops. Instead, the freezing water actually converts body fat into a waxy substance called adipocere, informally known as grave wax. And guys, this isn't just a theory. When sport divers located the wreck of the SS Kamloops in 1977, a ship that had sunk 50 years earlier in Lake Superior, they went into the engine room and found a fully recognizable crew member, preserved perfectly in this grave wax, still drifting near the ceiling. Divers respectfully refer to him as Grandpa, and because of this chemical process, he is literally still down there today.
Now, this kind of creepy preservation is really only matched by the sheer, terrifying oceanic violence these lakes can dish out during events like the White Hurricane of 1913. A massive collision of weather fronts created a storm so fierce it swallowed 19 ships in just 4 days. Sustained winds were hitting 90 miles per hour. The spray was freezing instantly under the ship's rigging, adding tons and tons of ice weight. The violence was so immense that massive freighters, like the perfectly maintained Charles S. Price, were actually found floating completely upside down, completely overwhelmed before they could even radio for help.
Moving on to Section 4, a drowned ancient landscape, civilization swallowed by the ice melt.
The ships are fascinating for sure, but if we go all the way to the geological bottom, we discover things far, far older than European explorers or modern freighters. The crucial takeaway here is that the Great Lakes basically function as a massive, active submerged archaeological site. 10,000 years ago, the water levels were radically lower. We've actually found stones in Grand Traverse Bay that appear to have a mastodon carved right into them. 9,000 years ago, what is now known as the Alpena Amberley Ridge was just a dry land bridge connecting Michigan and Ontario. Today, all of these incredibly ancient landscapes and the artifacts sitting on them are buried under 100 feet of freezing, preserving water.
And look, this isn't some fringe conspiracy theory. Peer-reviewed research published in top scientific journals has confirmed the existence of 9,000-year-old caribou hunting blinds sitting completely intact beneath Lake Huron. Because the water rose so rapidly as the ice melted, it just swallowed these hunting camps and seasonal campsites whole, protecting them from the plowing and the erosion that eventually destroyed similar sites up on land. So the lakes aren't just bodies of water. They're essentially flooded graveyards of entire ancient ways of human life.
Let's transition to Section 5, the Toxic Chemical Archive, a dark reflection of our modern world.
As we pivot to our final section, we uncover this huge, unseen environmental horror. You see, that exact same cold, stable water that perfectly preserves wooden ships and 9,000-year-old hunting camps, yeah, it also perfectly preserves industrial poisons. Consider this staggering chemical legacy for a moment. Agricultural phosphorus creates massive dead zones where dissolved oxygen drops so low that literally nothing can survive. Back in 2014, a massive bloom of cyanobacteria produced microcystin toxins that completely shut down the drinking water supply for 500,000 people in Toledo, Ohio for 3 straight days. And beneath all that, the sediment is holding on to mercury, PCBs, and heavy metals. It is a toxic archive just waiting down there in the dark.
So why does this matter so much? Because of one really terrifying number, 191 years. That is the average water retention time for Lake Superior. It takes nearly 2 entire centuries for a single molecule of water, or a single molecule of poison for that matter, to cycle out of the lake. A molecule of mercury dumped into Lake Superior back in the 1930s is still circulating in that cold, dark water today. The lakes do not flush, and they definitely do not forget.
Which brings us to a really lingering question for this explainer. Even with the most generous estimates, we have only mapped about 10 to 15% of the Great Lakes bed with modern instruments. The rest of it? It's completely unexamined. It's totally unknown. If they are already holding 6,000 shipwrecks, perfectly preserved crew members, 9,000-year-old hunting camps, and a 2-century archive of industrial toxins, what else are they keeping down there that we just haven't found yet? The next time you look out at that flat, quiet surface, just remember, it isn't empty, it is full, and it is absolutely not done collecting. Thanks so much for joining me today, and as always, keep exploring.